Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Orange Bloods Texas Football Channel. I'm Jeff Ketchum, joined by Anwar Richardson, as always, although it feels like it's been a minute since it's just been you and I. So glad to be back with you on an Overreaction Monday show. It's good to be doing the Overreaction Monday show again. I feel like we haven't been doing that. So it's back, people. Hit the like button, give us a subscribe. And yes, we'll have not just football players this week on the Orange Bloods Texas Football Channel, but we'll be breaking in our interviews with the likes of Ivan Melendez from the Texas baseball team, Dylan Daisu from the basketball team. We have a major announcement coming up a little bit later on. As a matter of fact, I think I can announce it based on when we record versus when this thing comes out. Texas softball player Lauren Burke is officially in her like 500,000 social media followers. You know, this thing is continuing to elevate itself and get bigger and better, and we're doing it for you. And all we ask is for an occasional like, tell your friends. It's free. It's free. We want you on Orange Bloods, but at the end of the day, these videos and the ones we'll be doing with the Texas athletes, all free, all for you. And like I said, we just asked for a couple of things. Onward.
Yeah.
You got a chance to see some football this weekend. I mean,
I did.
Not really football, but kind of.
It's like men in tights, you know, is what it is. Yeah, so football kind of kicked off. You know, training camp got started this past Friday, and UT actually opened their doors, allowed us to watch it on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, which, you know, had to make Alex Dunlap happy because Alex Dunlap is the guy that always wants some access. So, yeah, it was kind of our first view catch to be able to just kind of see this team, see a little bit portions of practice, a chance to see the quarterback side by side, the offensive line. Defense was like a little bit further away. You kind of, from where you understand where the bubble is. They were on that second field and we had to stand on the sidewalk for COVID things. So they were a little bit further away. It was a little bit harder to see them at times, a little bit easier on Sunday when they practiced in the stadium. But yes, we got a chance to actually see a little bit of Steve Sarkisian's team.
Hey, real quick, like COVID in Austin is kind of as bad now as it was this time last year, right? Like, we're lacking beds. I don't mean to make it like a COVID overreaction. It's just interesting that we have a certain amount of access this year that is way different than last year, but the dynamics aren't really all that different, although I guess the vaccines are a big deal. The vaccine helps. Obviously. Yeah I guess that little thing called the vaccine. But just in general, it is – I just wanted to say it out loud. It's a little weird to be hearing this COVID crisis in our state and it's full speed ahead. I have no commentary to add with it other than it exists. And – you know, it's going to be a packed house in the opener. And I it's all a little strange to me watching the world. Do you have an overreaction for me today after watching 3 days of Texas football? Give me a good overreaction because I think I've got one, but I want yours.
Well, if you're looking for a singular overreaction, I think my singular overreaction is I think Texas can win with either quarterback. If I want to go to a singular overreaction, you know, it's usually the starter and then the backup is a little bit below, a few notches below. And you're just kind of like, all right, you got to throw that guy in. You can catch. When I was out there watching both quarterbacks perform, and again, you know, there's the Hudson Card, there's Casey Thompson, wherever you are, there wasn't that much that you looked at and it's like, man, this guy's head and shoulders above the next person. And that could mean a lot of different things. And we could talk about it, but that means, for one, you know, Hudson Card, if you're able to hang with a guy who's been on campus for 4 years, props to you. It shows how good you really are. And it shows what your upside really is. You know, Casey Thompson is having a chance and he looks good. I think he looks sometimes a little bit better on the deep balls than Hudson does. But either way, I tell you, it's like splitting hairs, catch. Like, I feel like both guys are really good. I think people sleep on Hudson Card's athleticism. It's like people forget what kind of athlete he really was in high school. People want to talk about Casey as an athlete. Hudson was a pretty damn good athlete himself. So my overreaction is I walked away thinking no matter who is named the starting quarterback, unlike the Swoops and Buechele kind of debate where you felt like if Swoops gets the job, what the hell happens? In this case, I feel like either way, I feel like Texas is fine.
Well, even I would say when Ellinger and Buechele were battling for the job, you didn't know that the winner would actually be worth a damn. It just meant that someone had to be ahead in this competition of two guys that hadn't yet proven that they were above average college quarterbacks yet at that point. I'm with you. I mean, I might be president of the Hudson Card fan club, but I think that if Casey Thompson starts 12 games this season, I think he throws 30-something touchdown passes and has a really good year. I don't think Texas isn't in a quarterback crisis. They have to decide. It's like going to a good restaurant, man. You ever just look at the menu sometimes and you're like, Chili's isn't even like in the good restaurant, but sometimes when everything looks the same, it's hard to choose.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a little bit of, I think it's about deciding what restaurant Texas is trying to eat at. They've got two things on the menu that both are hard to choose from. The question is like, what quality of menu are we talking about? I think it's a pretty good menu. Like if one of these guys wasn't here and it was just the other guy, I think the hype train would be out of control because I think both of them are really good, right? So I think it's justified to be excited about the quarterback position.
Yeah.
It does feel like the conversation that holds the conversation about this team back. I mean, how do you really talk about 8-4, 9-3, 10-2, whatever, when all of the other teams do have this position more settled, and this is still the one thing that it feels like is going to need more time to unfold. But yeah, man, I don't disagree with you. I don't even know that that's an overreaction. I think that that's just a good, solid, smart reaction.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I mean, it was just you're looking. It's funny. I wrote this in my Sunday column. Like, but Alex Dunlap and I, we were sitting out there, and like I had made this comment. Really, it was like, to me, it was a comment in passing where I felt like, hey, stand side by side because, quarterbacks would be side by side and release, and same patterns on different sides. And I felt like the ball that Casey was throwing was getting there just a little bit quicker. It was more like bam, 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 bam. Like it was just a little tear. And I saw it consistently. And I made a comment.
He does not have the arm talent of Hudson Card, period.
But the comment, again, I'm just
saying,
get bogged down on this one, but I felt like, I feel like Casey Thompson does have arm talent.
He does. He just doesn't have the arm talent of Hudson Card. And I also think we got to call out, like, the thing that we haven't seen.
My eyes tell me differently.
But your eyes haven't even seen 11-on-11 workouts. Like
my eyes have been at practice.
True.
So I can't tell my eyes are lying to me. But when Sam Ellinger, none of us have been to 11-on-11.
When Sam Ellinger spends an entire year with both guys, and then his rave on Hudson is his arm, and his rave on Casey Thompson is not his arm. Not that Casey has a bad arm. I'm just saying people that we know that have spent extended amounts of time with both players, watching them in all capacities, I don't think they would rate the two arms as the same. That's all I'm saying.
My eyes don't lie. I watch both of them in person, throwing the same drills back to back. I think the Hudson arm strength versus Casey arm strength and that big differential is overhyped.
But it's not necessarily even about arm strength. That's not exactly what arm talent means. It means the capacity and the ability to put the ball in places that to create small windows and not need big windows.
Well, Casey throws better on a deep ball than Hudson does.
I don't know that I believe consistently that, just based off of drills.
And that was evident in spring ball.
everything changes when guys are running at you.
Well, I'm just saying it was evident in spring ball. It's evident here. So if you're talking about now, what Cutson does do, he throws a better spiral. I will give you that. He throws a much better spiral than Casey does.
You know what? I got to give you my overreaction.
Okay.
I think this quarterback battle is over. I think Hudson Card's the winner. And here's the reason why I would say
that's an overreaction.
Here's why I would say it. They're even, right? They're even. Is that what we're saying? They're kind of
fair enough. Yeah.
If Jatavian Sanders is even with Jared Wiley at any point in this camp, what do we think that means? If he's even, he's leaving. That's what we say about younger guys with older players. And I think we would feel that way about Jatavian Sanders. This time last year when we were talking about Bijan Robinson, the conversation was, well, he's kind of even with Keontae Ingram-ish. And our thought process was, well, if he's even, he's leaving. I think there's no position on this field that you could go to where you would say, if a young player is even with a much older player across the board, we would say that older player is in trouble. I think that Casey Thompson's in a position where we're not talking about Hudson Card's upside as much as we're talking about how they're even right now. I think in a world where we just write it down on paper and we take the names out of it, we say player A and player B, I think we say we know what's going to happen. It's complicated because of the weird little intricacies of this particular story. But if I wrote down on paper, player A is a 4-year player with no starting experience, none. And he's in a battle with a guy who's 2 years younger. And they're even. I think the young guy in that situation almost always wins. Now, it's quarterback. I can't walk in the shoes of Steve Sarkisian. I don't know what kind of pressure he's feeling to win the first game. And the answer of who might give you the best chance to win the 6th game versus the first game could be different. Like, I don't know. But I'm just saying, when you close your eyes and say Hudson Card in his second fall is even with Casey Thompson in his 4th, again, anywhere else on the field, and we're saying out loud, the older guy is in trouble. And if you think I'm wrong about that, I'd love to know the position where that's not the case.
Okay, I'll tell you where it's wrong. I don't have a rhyme, but I could say if they're even, you don't screw up your quarterback room. And so if they're even and all things are equal, I don't see why Sarkisian would risk having Casey Thompson transfer out a day or two later and be stuck with Hudson Card and Charles Wright as his only 2 scholarship players. Now, to me, if you're even, then what you say is, let me see if I can preserve this room as best as I can to get through this season. So I give that job to Casey Thompson. So this way, I'm not as worried about Hudson leaving right now because he's still young, as opposed to Casey Thompson leaving. And now I've got 2 guys. So to me, I don't know what rhymes with that. But if you're even, you preserve your quarterback room and make sure that you've got at least 2 quality starters, because no disrespect to Charles Wright, he's just not ready right now. He was always going to be a project. That there's no disrespect to him at all. And you can tell when you watch him out there, there's still throws that he's got to find ways to make. So that's going to take some time for him to feel comfortable. But if you're Sark, do you really risk it and go? Because at that point, if you go Hudson, then you go all chips in on this one guy all year long.
I mean, I guess the question, we're not even at this point having a conversation about who is your best player. And really, when we say he's even, if they're even, they're leaving. When we talk about young guys versus older guys, they're they're not really ever even. Bijan Robinson and Keontae Ingram a year ago were never really even. Keontae brought experience, and they didn't want to rush a guy. And there are little things about what ends up making a guy a starter for half the season instead of a younger guy. And then by the end of the year, you've almost, why were we doing this thing that we told ourselves we were going to do? Usually the talent between a guy who's in year 2 versus a guy in year 4, if they're even, they're not really even. It always feels like a lot of the conversation around Casey Thompson right now transfers around this, or centers around Freudian slip about what I was about to say, though, this idea of transferring. Because let me ask you this, if it's 60-40 Hudson Card over Casey Thompson, couldn't you still make the case that the fear of losing your depth is enough to justify starting Casey Thompson at that point? If that's such a, because we both agree both guys can be good this year and will be good, right?
Sure.
So in a world where you're confident that both guys are going to play, what has to be the mathematical edge that Card had? 51-49, I'm guessing, is not enough for you.
No. I mean, if you're saying 60-40 in Hudson's favor, then that to me is enough.
That's enough?
55-45 is not enough.
Okay.
Right? And anything less than anything less than 60, I would say I'm like, I don't know. What I just don't know is if it's even that number.
Well, of course.
Yeah. And
I don't know if it's 60-40. That's why I threw it out there.
Yeah. I mean, 60% versus 40%. Is that Buechele versus Swoops, right? Is that 60-40 in that battle? Is it 75-25? In Charlie's mind.
What was Buechele?
Not our mind.
What was Buechele? I mean, forget about what Charlie would have had them at.
Yeah.
What was Buechele and Swoops in 2016?
Much to do about nothing.
Yeah, I know, but what do we think the percentage was? Because at some point it came down to play the young kid. And it's a different set of circumstances because they didn't want to play the other guy. But I wonder what the percentage would have been, because you and I are having this conversation, and I can intellectually agree with you on the basis of the points you're making, which is, hey, man, the combo of those two guys on campus is better than anything that one guy has gone. Like, maybe the difference in the play between the two on the field as starters is minimal enough that you just rather have a backup than not. Like, maybe Hudson's, I don't know how to tangibly, like, metrically say, well, Hudson's going to be a 160 quarterback rating and Thompson's going to be a 155. That might not mean anything in terms of one-loss record. I mean, you might win all the same games and potentially lose all of the same games. Then does it turn into who you think is the starter next year? At what point does who your long-term answer is become the most important piece of the conversation?
Well, it's a great, fascinating question, right? And all I keep thinking about as relates to that, Catch, is, I think if Texas was going to start off with 3 easy games, I think you can justify saying Hudson, right? I think you can say if it was Rice, USF, someone else, right? You can, like, all right. It's
been a long time since Texas has been 3-0. We better slow down.
Correct. But I think if you're Texas and you're Sarkisian and you're starting the season versus Louisiana, who basically has a bunch of grown men that are coming back on that team, a bunch of 21, 22-year-old men. But, this is like BYU, where they just got a bunch of guys that are coming back, starters on both sides, starting quarterback, and they're coming into your house. How much does that, Catch, factor in do you throw a guy with limited playing experience? And I understand that Casey doesn't have a ton, but if you're talking about who's got a little bit more, do you say, man, I'd much rather go for a guy who's been on campus for 4 years and might be able to have a chance to recognize his stuff and sitting here been learning, as opposed to the guy that's been here for 2 years. Now you go with the guy for 2 years and you clearly are, I mean, you're going all chips in on him, but you're going all chips in on saying, you believe this guy can beat Louisville at home. You believe this guy can beat Arkansas on the road. And, you know, you get, obviously you have your Rice after that and then go into conference play. Like that says a lot. And I think something's to be said. And I believe, Catch, in these moments, coaches kind of want to go to their little blankets and say, like, okay, this is my safety blanket. I'm going to go with the older guy with the hopes that he can pull it through.
It's rare that I'm speechless, right? But it's a hard one to answer. It is. And, you know, it's funny. I got a direct message from somebody today who, you know, felt like it was telling me they had some inside access, and they were saying the vibe that they were getting was Hudson Card. And, you know, I even bring that up because I don't even know if it was true or not. I'm just telling you, those things like come across, you see those things, and it is like, I almost think that's the perfect question. I don't think Sark would like the question, but boy, I'd love to know his answer for just this very thing. Like what, in order for him to make a decision on, let's say, the opening Monday of spring football, does one of these guys have to be 60-40 ahead of the other? Because I'm with you, like 55-45, that's like a coin flip, barely off a coin flip.
Yeah.
60-40 was like, well, like, it's interesting. It's not a huge adjustment of the numbers, but it's enough even in your mind to go, okay, well, if a guy's at 60-40, that's significant. I'd love to know what his perception of this is, because if he told us the exact same thing, I think you could almost mold what is important for him. I just can't get beyond. Look, here's another little overreaction. My only other overreaction, I guess, on a Monday, because I don't want us to go super long, right? But I don't know that I believe that this coaching staff believes they've got a championship team. And I believe he'll say a lot of things, and we know they've got good players. But I remember Mack Brown in 1998, at this exact time in the summer, he panicked a little bit in recruiting. He was giving out offers to guys, like 2-star guys that nobody had ever heard of. And they end up winning the Cotton Bowl, and Ricky wins the Heisman. So Mac could kind of laugh about it a little bit as the years went by, because that class where they were offering nobodies ended up being the number one class in the country. But at a point, they weren't. And I remember having a conversation with Mack Brown where Mac said, we were offering those scholarships because we didn't think anybody would take them in December and January. They didn't think that the team that had been 4-7 the year before was going to be very good. If you watch how Texas has handled recruiting in the last week and taking a couple of out-of-state guys who are kind of under the radar, the recruiting profiles aren't huge. You could make the case they probably could have got those guys if they'd wanted them, if they'd waited a little bit longer. When I see Sark not holding out for bigger name recruits in August and taking out-of-state 3-stars, it makes me believe a little bit that they don't think if they thought they were about to go 10-2 and watch the hell out, he's saving all of his scholarships. He is. That they're not is a very subconscious admission for me, a little bit. And so what I would love to know is, who does he think next year? Because I do believe he thinks this staff and this program by year 2 will have it up off the ground. If this team's not ready to be championship good this year, who in his mind does he see as the guy next year? Because one of the other things that we can talk about is that if this isn't going to be a championship year, then, and they just know that, right? then go ahead and start investing. If your seniors are going to get you 8 wins, play your freshmen. If your seniors are going to get you 9 wins and your freshmen are going to get you 8, boy, there's like a conversation to maybe be had there. Like there's a weird thing that goes on here. And I just wonder in his mind when he puts his head on a pillow at night, who he thinks his starter is at the end of next season. And if that's your guy, I just don't know whoever that guy is, why you would want to hold off on the development of the guy that you think next year gets you to the mountaintop.
It's great. It's interesting. So I'm looking at the schedule. And, it's once they start off obviously against Tech, I'm thinking of the conference schedule. To your point, what you're saying, so it's Tech, it's at TCU, then OU, then Oklahoma State. I mean, at some point, if after Iowa State, if they've had a couple of conference losses, do you just kind of say at that point, Kansas, West Virginia, Kansas State? Do you just say, all right, let's just, it'll be an interesting question to say, at what point do you go from, winning to building, right? And I think there was a time where I think Charlie did that at some point too. Was it, I don't know, was it year 1 or 2, maybe something like that but I know it, we definitely know in year 2, Charlie was saying, all I'm doing is playing freshman, right? Yeah. That's all he did. He was like, I'm just playing freshman. I don't care.
He was playing his class.
Yes.
His first class. So he was like, to hell with it. These are my guys.
So he played Malik. He played, I think, Connor Williams. So who's all the guys that were in that class? PJ Locke.
That would have been Deshaun Elliott, right? No,
yes.
Deshaun Elliott. Like I'm trying to think who's all in that 2015 class. Your Holton Hills, your Devontae Davises. They played all those guys in the secondary. Your Chris Boyds.
Yes. Who, by the way, became NFL players to his credit. I mean, he did recruit well. He had a vision. He didn't execute it as a coach, but from a talent perspective, they did recruit some pretty good talent. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Like, I think year 1, you got to go for it. But yes, it's a fascinating thing because recruiting, Catch, is the thing that, you're playing the wait and see game, but you and I have talked about it, and it's not going as great. I think you put something in your column on Sunday that you saying, hey, you thought it was going to be a top 5 class. I think it was one of your buy or sell questions, yeah. Right? And you've had to come off of that and say, like, all right, you were wrong.
Way wrong.
Yeah.
Way wrong.
I mean, at this point, what are we trending towards from a recruiting perspective? We were trending towards top 15?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The thing is, a top 10 class and a top 15 class are essentially the same. The only thing that would make them different is if you looked at it and went, well, one class has got a half dozen elite guys, and the rest of it maybe not elite. And the other school's got 2 elite guys, but like more solid 4-star guys. Those solid 4-star guys don't mean a lot to me. I mean, they're just not much different than the 3-star guys. And the problem that Texas has right now is they just don't have Malik Murphy's the only national top 100 player. Jalen Blue's a hard one to call. I bet he ends up in that territory again. But, Texas needs 4 times that many guys in this class at that level. And they need 8 guys like that instead of 2. And, the possibilities have dwindled considerably to the point where it's like, okay, nothing's changing in recruiting until Texas wins. Like, the recruits have made it known. So, before you get too all in on Arch Manning, you got to make sure that Texas is even going to be good enough to really put themselves in a ball game for Arch Manning, or we'll be back in this same place in 12 months. So, I'm not telling people I wouldn't say completely don't pay attention to recruiting, but I wouldn't get too high or low right now. Everybody should know where this thing is. So now it's about Sarkisian. Texas didn't bring Sarkisian here just because they thought he was a better recruiter than Tom Herman. Tom Herman's a pretty damn good recruiter. Like that wasn't recruiting had fallen apart, but he wasn't a bad recruiter. They brought Sarkisian here because they thought they were getting in an offensive mind and a coach what they thought they were getting in Tom Herman and never quite got. So if they're right, that's who Sark is. Now it's time to focus on football, and it's time to watch Sark do this thing that he's kind of famous for. And it's almost like Texas needs to let that thing wash over its body, that recruiting is so important that we've not even allowed Sark and this staff to have a game yet. And it's like, okay, let's let them have a game. We're 4 weeks away. Let them have their game time. And then if it's not where it needs to be, then we can react because we'll know what it means really for recruiting. But now it's really put up or shut up time for this football program.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, they're not getting that first year bump that we've seen most coaches get, which is, I think if you told Texas fans that back in January, I think they would have told you that you were crazy to even believe that something like that was even possible. But they're not getting that bump right now. To your point, people are saying, you got to show us, Texas. And so, yeah, you're right. Now they've got to go out. They've got to show. They've got to win. They've got to be able to essentially create their own momentum. It's not created off of what they did in the past. It's not created off of what the wins in Alabama. It's not going to be any of that. It's going to be literally judged off of 2021. In 2021 will basically determine the next few years. Because if you win big in 2021, then you're able to go to the class of 2023 and 24 and be able to say, hey, this is what we're doing here now. It really is a new day here at UT. But catch, if you don't, and if it's just in that 8-9 win range, then it's just kind of like, it's UT, and and now you're on still kind of on the ropes and hoping for the best as far as that is concerned. So you're right. They've got to win at it. And I don't know how many moves the needle. Does this 10 is the target number, catch, in order to move the needle to get people or get the elite recruits kind of back in the fold with UT? I mean, is 10 the floor?
I think 10. Look, Mac didn't win 10 in his first year, but of the wins he got, they were good, man. Mm-hmm. Like he went on the road at Nebraska, and once they won that game, they didn't even have to finish out the season. They beat Oklahoma in Mac's first year. They beat Texas A&M in Mac's first year. It didn't matter that they got beat by 40 by Kansas State or whatever that ungodly score was. It didn't matter that they got beat by 30 by UCLA, I guess 20 something. Like they got their ass handed to them a couple of times, but they won the right games. Texas, if they beat Oklahoma, I think they go 9-3. But if you don't beat Oklahoma and you're getting by on volume instead of quality, then you probably got to win 10. Texas beats Oklahoma. Almost what happens the rest of the season doesn't matter because they can sell that because Oklahoma's supposed to be better than them, and they'll be able to say right then and there, this is what we're doing. But if they come up short, then yeah, now you're probably talking. There's a world where 9-3 gets them to a really good bowl game, but is that bowl game the Alamo Bowl? So if you're 10-3 with an Alamo Bowl win, it feels like you're so close to being a bride, but not quite. Maybe
you gotta go New Year's 6, don't you? It's got to be a New Year's 6 bowl, right?
Well, look, 10-2 gets you into. That's the thing. Like I don't know what 9-3 gets you. 10-2 gets you into a New Year's 6 game. Yeah. You're probably playing in the Cotton Bowl at that point, and you might be playing Texas A&M or somebody like that, because that would be a big game. And if A&M weren't in the playoff, say A&M doesn't make the playoff, but they win 10 games, then I think you're very easily see Texas and Texas A&M playing in the Cotton Bowl. Mm-hmm. But if you're 9-3, now all of a sudden, God, it might be the Alamo Bowl again. And
just won one of those, and that didn't help.
It didn't even help the guy. Didn't help the coach keep his job.
Correct. Absolutely. That if there ever was an I-9 trophy of bowl games, I mean that's on the list.
Yeah, the next time a player sits out, just remember they didn't just win that game. They emphatically won that game. Homeboy lost his job a couple of days later.
Correct. Absolutely correct.
And I have one baby. Look, we've been one baby overreaction.
I got one baby one as well.
It might be the same. The defensive side of the ball ain't ever getting its hands on Jatavian Sanders. Jeff Banks will be in the ground dead and cold and still clutching on to Jatavian Sanders before he ever lets that dude get out of his clutches.
That guy's that. You know, it's interesting to watch. You might have watched his games, and of course, watched him in the state championship game versus, our Cedar Park Wolves, which is now my Cedar Park Wolves because you have abandoned us. So it's fine. I'll hold it down up here for us. But watching him and seeing him, all throughout high school, you just knew he's big, athletic, all those type of things. And you just see him in person. You're just like, my God, you are a huge man. And I don't want to say like people like to say stuff like, oh, he's a grown man. No, I'm a grown man. I don't look like that. You're a grown man. You don't look like that. I hate when people say he's a grown man. Nah, we got grown men have dad bods. Okay. He is a athletic specimen, pass catcher. That's a guy. Jeff Banks was spending some time with him, a lot of time with him in practice. And Sarkisian kind of tried to downplay it and saying, oh, they're just getting certain guys up to speed. I think Jeff Banks knows he's got something special with this guy. Yeah, and there's every moment that you can to work one-on-one with a guy like that, you do it. You do it because he has a chance to be a stud. He's absolutely has a chance to be special. Probably the best one since Finley. Best tight end since Finley, potentially.
It's their best tight end prospect since Bo Scaife.
Oh.
Jermichael really wasn't a good college football player.
Just a great pro.
Yes. I mean, he always had freakish talent, but I had always heard like his last game against Texas A&M, the last game that Finley played in, I think he graded out at like 30% or something ungodly as a blocker and like just overall. And yeah, there was David Thomas was the better tight end for the Longhorns, but from a talent standpoint, it's Bo Scaife. Bo Scaife was freaky. What's your overreaction?
Just a quick one. This is not Malik Murphy related at all. But for you and I, who were Cade Klubnik fans even before the state championship game last year, and people kind of gave us a little bit of a hard time about saying it. And for you, who proclaimed that you thought Cade Klubnik at that time was better than Quinn, and put him as you thought as the top quarterback in the state, by default, in some ways, Cade Klubnik becomes the number one quarterback in the 2022 class just because Quinn isn't going to play. And I just want to say a little overreaction. Props to you for standing on that table a little while ago. A little bit props to myself, but props to us because
absolutely.
Again, this is not a Malik. This is totally different than Malik. This is not one's better than the other. We're just talking about Cade Klubnik, what he's able to do, kind of becoming the number one quarterback in this class is pretty monumental for him.
Yeah, man. I'm good with quarterbacks. I'm good. Quarterbacks, for whatever reason, I usually have a good history with like loud declarations. Sam Ehlinger had been my previous one. He had no scholarship offers. I said he was the best quarterback in the state of Texas way before Texas ever offered. I ended up being right. It happens sometimes. Yeah. Have I ever told you about Drew Brees? No, I'm
not this week.
Not this. What time is it? We call it Monday when Catch brings up Drew Brees. Look, thanks for watching. Do us a solid. Hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button because there are more videos on the way. Anwar and I always love our Overreaction Monday show. Thanks for watching. We'll do this again next week. Later.